Hello everybody. Well, recently I had one of my subscribers ask me if I'd ever made apple butter. And I had to say no, I've never made apple butter. I've also never tasted apple butter. So it's something that sort of intrigued me. I'm going to give it a try. I have the ingredients, I think, pretty much all lined up there. You need 4 pounds of apples, and they're suggesting in this recipe that I'll put a link to cooking apples, either Granny Smith or Gravenstein's. I'm not using either. Those are off my pumpkin sweet apple tree, which is a cooking long storage apple, an old heritage apple. You will not be able to find those in a store anywhere, I do not believe, but those are pumpkin sweets, 4 pounds of them. A cup of apple cider vinegar and 2 cups of water. I've mixed the two together there. Sugar, about 4 cups, and I haven't pre-measured it out because it depends on what kind of volume you have for the apples once you get them cooked down and strained. You add a ½ cup of sugar for each cup of apple puree, a pinch of salt, which I don't have out there yet, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a ½ teaspoon of cloves, and a ½ teaspoon of allspice, and the zest and juice of 1 lemon. So let's get started at this. I looked at numerous recipes and settled on this one, but I'm also adding something, a point here that was from a different recipe. The apples don't have to be peeled or cored, but one of the recipes said to remove the blossom end and the stem end. So I'm going to do that. And then the apples just get quartered, and they're cooked, skin and core included. This particular recipe says that the pectin, which is what would gel or solidify the I don't want to say sauce, but the apple butter when it's made. Most of that is in the core, evidently. I'd never heard of that before. And the peeling will add flavor. So you keep them all. I'll bring you back. I've got these all quartered and in my large pot. You use a pot if you've got one with a heavy bottom so that it won't stick to the bottom when it's cooking. This is my favorite pot for making jams. It's actually a small pressure cooker that has an excellent heavy bottom on it and heavy steel pot as well. So I'll bring you back in a few minutes here. I guess what I should have told you more about is the apple that I'm using. As I said, it's a heritage apple. I have a huge old tree that I planted many years ago called pumpkin sweet. It has many other names. If you Google it, you'll probably come up with the long list of names. But it stores very well. If you had like a root cellar or something, they would store for most of the winter. And like a Granny Smith, when ripe, they're green. They're green all summer, but this time of year they're as sweet as they're going to be. They're not a dessert apple. You wouldn't want to sit around and munch on them. They're kind of dry, very hard, crisp, but they store very well. They make an excellent apple pie and apple sauce and baked apples and all that good stuff, and hopefully a good apple butter. Well, they're in that heavy bottomed pot, adding the water and the apple cider vinegar. And they get you get covered. Turn the flame on first, I guess. They get covered and brought to the boil, and then you turn the heat down to a simmer, and it'll probably take about 20 minutes to cook them until they're soft. Well, it's had its 20 minutes, and it's sort of like a coarse applesauce with peelings and seeds and cores and all. And now you pass it through a sieve of some sort, and they recommend either a chinoise which is one of those conical tape shaped sieves, funnel shaped. It has like a wooden pestle that you push things through the side walls on it. I've never owned one of those. Or a kitchen mill, and I do have a kitchen mill. I suspect you could use just a coarse strainer too if you had a coarse strainer. The kitchen mill comes with 3 screens. That's the largest holes, that's the smallest one. I'm starting with the medium one. I'm concerned that the larger hole might let the seeds go through, so we'll see what happens anyway. And it's supposed to make 3 pints, roughly 3 pints, a little more, a little less, depending on what you get out of the sauce here. And I have sterilized 3-pint jars and have them ready to go. You don't drain it, by the way. This has still got the water and the vinegar in it. So everything that went on the stove is still here. I think that seems to be working quite well. I'll look down below here. Yeah. There's always a lot that sticks on the bottom, but you can get that later. Well, I'll bring you back and show you the finished product before I measure it to see how much sugar I have to use. Well, that only took a few minutes. Got a lot more than I thought I would get, I guess. I don't know what I've got yet, of course. Now I have to measure it to determine how many cups I have, because for each cup of this puree you use a half cup of sugar. So I will bring you back after I have finished counting how many cups I've got here. Okay, I measured out what looks like applesauce here now, kind of tart applesauce I would imagine with the vinegar that's in there. I measured out and got 7 3/4 cups, so I'm going to just say it's 8 cups and add 4 cups of sugar. And the zest and the juice of 1 lemon. And the spices, I've mixed the 3 spices together in this one container. Try not to get them over in the wet spot so they won't clump all to pieces, yeah? And just a dash of salt. I'm going to put a few grinds of sea salt in there. Now this gets combined to dissolve the sugar. Mix in the spices, obviously. I'll bring you back when I'm over at the stove. Well, now it's on the stove again. The gas is turned on. And it gets cooked over medium-low heat for 1 to 2 hours until you get the right consistency. And it talks about doing the same sort of a test that you do if you're making a jam or a jelly without using pectin on a plate that's cold that you've had in the refrigerator, in the freezer, I guess, really, to get it good and cold. A little bit of it gels and doesn't just run down across the plate. So. It says to stir frequently and to make sure that when you're stirring, you scrape along the bottom so that nothing is catching on the bottom. I'll probably bring you back before the hour or 2 is up to show you what it's looking like, but that's the next part of it anyway. It's been simmering away for probably a little more than a half hour. I'm doing it at a lower temperature. It also said in the instructions that you could do it at a lower temperature, it would just take longer. I'm just concerned about anything with that much sugar and becoming more and more dense all the time. It's getting quite thick. will really burn on the bottom and ruin the whole thing. So doing it at a lower temperature. It is already quite thick though. The water and the vinegar in there, I guess, should certainly, most of that has to be evaporated, but the Granny Smith, right? The pumpkin sweet apples that I'm using are a very dry apple, so they didn't add an awful lot of moisture to this. I don't know how much more it will reduce. I'm just concerned that there's considerably more in there right now than 3-pint jars that I have ready for it. So if it takes any more, I'll just put it in plastic containers and put it in the fridge and use it first, I guess. But I think that's a bit more than 3 pints in there right now. Well, it's a half or 3/4 of an hour further on. It is getting much thicker and has reduced quite a bit. I've turned the heat down as low as it will go. I definitely do not want this to scorch on the bottom. And I set a timer. Every 3 minutes I come and stir it again. But I'll probably let it go at least another half hour or so. I haven't really done the test thing yet, but I think should be thicker than what it is right now anyway. Well, as I've said before, I've never made this before. I don't know whether this is done or not. It has reduced a lot and it is really thick. I'm assuming once it cools off it will thicken even more. So I'm going to say that it's done. I tried that thing with the cold plate in the freezer and I don't know. I never had any luck with that anyway when I was making jams and jellies that way. So I couldn't tell what that might be doing. Whatever it is, I'm going to eat it on toast. And it says to fill it within 1/4 of an inch of the top. A little bit more there yet, I guess. I know one thing, it made the house smell very good. All those spices. That's that. Now, I'm not going to do a hot water bath because of the amount of acid involved here. The whole juice of a whole lemon plus that cup of cider vinegar. If you're going to do this and you don't feel that it is safe enough and you want to do a hot water bath, then you could put them in a hot water bath for 10 minutes after it comes back to a full rolling boil. And that way you would be guaranteed, but I don't think there's any problem with it. So I'll show you the 3 jars or 3 jars plus, whatever I get when I finish here. Well, I think this might have worked. I won't know for a while yet. The bit that was left behind in the pot that I was cooking it in, that seemed to gel up quite quickly as it cooled. I had just enough for 3 pints. I don't know, this jar is a bit bigger. It might be slightly more than a pint. And enough to fill this little ramekin, and that's all there was. So I'm thinking I might have got it at the right stage. I'm not sure. You see how it's sort of holding its shape. It isn't flattening out in the ramekin. Anyway, I'm going to put that in the refrigerator and chill it down thoroughly. I'll meet you in the dining room with tea and toast and apple butter shortly. Well, as I said before, I have never made this stuff or had it. So if you see something here that's different than what it's supposed to be and you've made it before, feel free to speak up. I am impressed with the way that it did set up once it was cooled off in the refrigerator. So it's definitely very spreadable. I'm having it with a slice of my homemade sourdough multigrain bread. Very spreadable anyway. I assume that's what it's supposed to be like. I know I like the taste. I tasted it enough times when it was cooling down there when I was cleaning out the pot. Well, here goes nothing. Let's give it a try. I like the flavor very much because I like all of those 3 spices that went into it. I've been wondering all the time that I was making it about the cup of vinegar. Would you be able to taste the vinegar in the final product? And I don't taste it at all. The other things, the apple and the spices or whatever, if they eliminated the vinegar flavor or what, but I wouldn't even be able to tell you that it was there. Can't say as I taste the lemon either, actually. It is very good. Something that I know I will enjoy and probably make again. Quite easy to make. So, if you haven't made apple butter before, as I hadn't, it is apple season here in this part of the world anyway, so apples are quite available and quite reasonably priced this time of year. If you've got your own tree, that makes it even better. I hope you'll give it a try. Thank you very much for watching.